Mark is a very thoughtful person, and what stands out for me was his great sense of humor. He makes my life very fun. He always say, if I make you laugh 3 times, he's done his job.
Ding Jo is a type A driven personality. She is very caring. She's very loving, very warm.
Well, Mark means a life to me. It's very hard to imagine a life without him.
My world revolves around her. She has always been the center of my universe.
I'm Ding Jo Currie. I was born in Taiwan and immigrated here in 1968. I was born in 1953.
My name is Mark Currie. I was originally born in Washington, D.C. Spent the first about 2.5, almost 3 years of my life there. Don't remember any of it. And then my father, who worked at NCR, moved to Dayton, Ohio. And I was 3, and I was raised in Dayton, Ohio from that time on.
I was raised in the rural countryside of Taiwan. I have 1 brother, 1 older sister, and in Taiwan, the only relatives I have are my parents.
I have all brothers. There are no sisters. My mother and father were very conservative. Father was the only working one in the family. Mother was a stay-at-home mom, took care of the house, took care of the kids.
I was educated in the United States since the high school, last couple of years of my high school, back to Dayton, Ohio, and for my graduate studies and master's degree in psychology, personnel counseling. And I had a long gap in between with school and kids and work, and I landed in California and finished my PhD at the University of Southern California in international and intercultural education.
Was educated mostly in Ohio through high school. Came out to California in 1979. Got married shortly after, had kids, and then went back to the University of Phoenix and got my bachelor's in business administration. I now own my own company that we produce plastic bottles.
One of the things that's central to us when we work on it together is the central theme of family unity. And I think that comes from our faith, the Baha'i faith, the unity of mankind. Well, you could have unity of mankind. You start with the unity of the family. If you can't even work through a unity of family, how do you talk about unity of mankind? So that's our starting point, is that central to our problem solving is how do we build that unity?
Another piece of advice is that people have to look, especially when they're starting to get married. I think they have to be realistic and sit down and say, okay, these are our differences. So how do we work through those? And I think by taking an honest look before the marriage at how you're going to do this and what you can do helps in the marriage later.
I have to tell you that when I met him, he was absolutely a pest. It was my last semester in my graduate studies. I was about to leave, but I changed job. I was a waitress, trying to make ends meet. So we met in the restaurant where we both worked, and that's really how we met.
I was eating dinner in the lunchroom when she walked in, and I was sitting with a friend of mine who was also working there, and I saw her, and I didn't know her, and basically told my friend, that's the woman I'm going to marry. And from then on, all the effort was to try to get her to go out with me and to try to get some type of relationship started.
This one day, same thing, he says, "Kate, can I take you out after work on Thursday?" And I said, "Of course, if I'm off Thursday." That was a way of saying no, because I know I would never get Thursday off.
But she always worked on Thursday. So what I did is I went in to talk to Tony, who was the manager, and asked him, give her Thursday off. He says, I can't, because that's only the day that she can work. So I said, okay, if you don't give her that day off, I quit. And he goes, well, no, you can't do that. He says, why do you want to do it? I said, because I want to take her out. And this grin came over his face. He goes, okay, I take care of you.
And so we both walked over there to look at the schedule on the wall, and I couldn't believe my eyes. I said, what? How come Tony did not schedule me for Thursday? So at that point, I had no other excuse because I've always said that.
I think in a bicultural family is even more difficult than in a regular family, where the two cultures blend, the two cultures are assumed. So learning how to do things and learning the best way to do it, and always using the consultation to do it, to sit down and to communicate and understand what works, what doesn't work, just get rid of, and let's continue and find what does work.
I think from the very beginning, I assumed, because we come from different cultures, that we automatically going to have more conflicts than regular couples.
Oh, yeah.
Well, since I never lived with anybody from the same culture, I do not know what to compare with. I just assumed we would have it. Basically, we start with more differences. Therefore, we are going to see things differently on so many different things at so many different levels. I think we knew that, and one of the things we talked about when we first got married was that
What's the differences?
That we are going to have those more conflicts than other couples, so we are going to have to know how to work through problems together. We're going to work through it.
We had decided that we needed to find a church. We were both religious, believed in God, but didn't know where because we attended two different churches. I was at the time fairly agnostic, believed in God. She was raised more Catholic. So we couldn't go to the Catholic church. We couldn't go, so we had to find a church.
When it comes to our wedding, I think it's another symbol of how we decided our life combined will be. That we're not going to give up any part of our culture as much as we can. We are a bicultural marriage, so we want to start that way. So part of our marriage was the Chinese traditional marriage, and part of it was a Western marriage.
When we decided to get married, we both sat down and we've communicated the entire marriage. And we said, okay, what does marriage mean? And we had both decided we are only going to get married once. So regardless of what adversities, regardless of what good things came, we had to live through those. We had to keep the communication there. We had to keep the focus there. And we learned early that the focus really was a spiritual focus. It's not on the things. It's not on the jobs or the objects, but it was on each other and the spirituality that was there and the love of God, and to make certain that that never left.
So we decided that, one, it was important for us to be married in front of God. So that was our commonality. So we had a church wedding, traditional church wedding. And then during the reception period, we decided to have the Chinese part. So we had the double happiness symbol, and I wore the Chinese traditional dress for wedding, and we did the traditional Chinese blessings. So we had a bicultural marriage wedding.
When we got married, we said we weren't going to have kids for 5 years. After we had kids, then we decided, okay, if we're going to have kids, how are we going to raise them? We want them to have spirituality. We want God to be in their life. But how do we raise them? In what religion? So we went out and started looking
That's right.
for a religion. And so we were out
Together.
So we were studying with the Mormon missionaries. We were going to different churches. We were out actually actively looking. Someone who was carrying a book called The God of Buddha. Now, her father is Buddhist. She was raised Catholic. Her father has always told her there is no God in Buddhism. So carrying a book called The God of Buddha, her first question was, how do you reconcile those two?
We went to firesides, actually, quite a few firesides, probably
2 years.
almost 2 years of the firesides, and we read also Baha'i books. We like the principle, I like the principles from the very beginning of unity of mankind, the elimination of prejudice, and
Equality of men and women.
Right, the equality of men and women, all of that we really, really like at the intellectual level. But at this one fireside was Judge James Nelson, and at the end of the fireside, Mark asked this question of Judge Nelson, said, we've been coming to your Baha'i firesides for a long time, and we like the principles, but what does it mean to be a Baha'i? Well, Judge Nelson's answer was, it would be like this. You are a drop of water sitting on the riverbanks. And if you join the Baha'i faith, that means you jump into the river and flow with the collective force of the water and join the mighty ocean. And of course, with that, Mark pulled me aside after the fire, says, Joe, I think I'm going to join the Baha'i faith. And I said, well, you're not going to.
It's about time.
Yeah, I said, well, you're not going to join without me, so we're going to jump in this river together. So that night, we both signed.
That was 1984, and our first daughter was born in 85.
Yeah, so we
had accomplished our goal in finding how we were going to raise our kids.
Knowing Mark, a Westerner, there's certainly part of the culture that he really exemplified that I really like. I like the part that Mark allows me to be who I am. In the culture, in the Chinese traditional culture, sometimes it's hard to be who you are because you are not who you are as an individual, but you are only in a part of the whole.
One of the things that I liked about the Chinese culture the most is the inclusiveness of family. I was not raised that way. Knowing all of a sudden coming into a culture that really holds family to be the heart of everything. Family does everything for family. That was a little bit different for me, and I liked that because I didn't have that.
I know he always tells me that, if he's not around, I will live just fine because I've been a very independent woman in his eyes. Yes, I'm very independent, but behind that, I am an ordinary woman who needs a man's love, who needs that companionship just the same.
What does she mean is kind of like, how do you take, I'm the moon to her earth. How do you take the earth away? What does the moon mean at that point? So without her, I don't know where I would be.
He is my life. Now that we're empty nesters, when children are gone, we come full circle. The way we started, two of us together, is the way we are going to end our lives, two of us together. And that's the way I pictured it.